All the other overdose I had, I don't remember really. Like it was like out you go and you're awake and you don't know what
Yeah.
happened. But this one, I was experiencing it on a different level. I was literally outside my body, and for a moment, I felt this is it. I did it. I killed myself. I'm at peace. Why am I at peace?
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on Coffee with Kuda. Today I'm excited to bring Curtis back for his second interview with us. Curtis, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Excellent. I am excited to have you back. Your story was overwhelming to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, that's the craziness of addiction. I mean, at the time, I thought there I was being a dad. Here I am back in her life doing something good.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm addicted to heroin. So my partner at the time, her working in the sex trade was making some money, and I was doing odd day jobs with construction guys that would still allow me back for one day.
Yes.
So
Yes.
and that's all our money was going to dope. Even if we thought, and we meant it in our hearts. Oh, we're going to save our money this week. We're going to get a check and we're going to get an apartment. And of course, that never happened.
I know we had last spoken about your wife working in the streets and your daughter working in the street. How are you holding on? Because you said you prayed to God, like, I can't do this.
Yeah, like I said, I was sitting on the cardboard. That moment I always remember, and hanging on to the luggage and the leash of the dog, and seeing my partner and my daughter up on the street corner. And it was at that time I was tearing up inside. I knew my situation, but I had to kind of be strong in the community, and I was praying to God. I was just saying, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what I've done. I don't even know how I got here. Lord, can you just please? I'll do anything to get me out. And yet, part of me was still waiting for my partner to come back with some dope. You know what I mean? It was this quagmire that I was stuck in. I was crying out to God, but at the same time, I wasn't able to change anything. So what happened with is it was sort of shortly after that time that my partner and I actually sat down and had a conversation. Like I said, we were both living in the shelter at the time. And so we met outside and we talked, we need to do something about this. And she was agreeable. And the plan was at some point, one of us would go into detox
Yeah.
and get clean, we were hoping. And then because of the dog, that person would have to stay out in the community once they were sober, and then the other person would go in and get clean. And then our hopes were that we were going to get an apartment together. The plan didn't really transpire that way. What initially happened that got me into detox was my first overdose.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that.
So my first overdose, fentanyl had just started creeping into the streets there in Victoria.
Okay.
And I guess I didn't have the tolerance that other people did. And so when I was just using the regular amount that I would use, I was in the bathroom of the shelter, Rock Bay in Victoria, and I just gave myself an injection like I always do. And I remember waking up on the floor, my pants were down around my legs, and there's people standing around me, emergency services. I didn't even realize, like, they were telling me I had overdosed, but the feeling of your first overdose is that it didn't happen. But you can't understand why you're sitting in that situation and people are standing around you. You're sort of in denial.
Wow. Yeah.
But it was at that moment that I said, you know what, this is an opportunity. That little bell sort of went off my head. This is what we were talking about. Here's my opportunity to go to the hospital. Here's my chance to go to detox. So my partner was like literally walking into the shelter as I was being taken out
Yeah.
of the shelter, and she saw this first overdose. And I said to her, don't worry. This is the opportunity we've been talking about. I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to get clean, and I'm going to come back, and like our plan.
Yes.
I did. I went to the detox. They were very good with me in Victoria. They sent me over to detox, and I spent 7 days there. At the time, like a lot of people in addiction, I thought that, if I just get 7 days clean, that's all the work I have to do. Like, I'll be sober, and I'll just do everything right.
Yes.
I came back after the 7 days, hoping that now she would take her turn. See, the addiction got a hold of her just as bad as it did me, and she wasn't ready for that fight at that point. And now here I am, 7 days sober in Victoria, seeing my daughter, seeing the mother of my child still doing what they're doing, I think I only needed a couple of days like that, and I was back using again. And of course, she's very upset with me because she wanted me to be able to be sober longer. But all I could hear was that she wanted to keep using, basically. And you know what? So did I at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what else to do. So I continued to have overdose after overdose after overdose that summer. And fortunately, and it's just amazing this happened, but I was either at the shelter and there was some staff there to help me, or I was around other people in their house. There was one situation in Victoria where I overdosed, and it was just a acquaintance's house. It was a place to be warm and hang out for a while out of the rain. And I did some dope in the kitchen. And the next thing I remember, I'm waking up off the ground, and some people were all standing around me, and they didn't want to call the cops or the emergency because there was a lot of people using the house. There was guns, there was other drugs, and so
Of course.
they were just sticking me with Narcans. According to them, they had to use up 8 Narcans, so they went through 2.5 kits to try to bring me back. The last thing they wanted was a dead body in their house, so their party would end, right? And that's the sort of the sadness of when you think about it, right? Like human life doesn't really matter to anyone.
I do want to go back just slightly here real quickly, Curtis, because you said your tolerance levels were not as high.
Yeah.
There's a reason, and the reason is because you got into addiction really late in your life. So first period is at 36.
Yeah.
We have to be aware as well that this is not even the addiction. This is just you getting a treatment.
Yeah.
Getting medication.
Or neck pain, yeah.
Right? Let's remember then you spent how many years in Las Vegas until you came here from that time?
Almost 10.
You spent 10 years. So you came to Victoria, back to Victoria at 46. You're now first time really getting addicted
Yeah, I believe
to
it's 48
opiates.
years old is when I put the first heroin into my
48 years old.
I had a total of 12 overdoses in Victoria, and like I said, I was very fortunate that people were around. But at some point, I realized that there was no way I could get sober and help my family in any way together. I understood at that point that I had to separate myself. So I was staying at I went to detox in Victoria one more time.
Okay.
And there was a gentleman that came to detox that worked for a recovery society here in Vancouver.
Okay.
And he was offering beds, if I wanted to come. And although I still had this attachment to Victoria and thought, I was actually grateful at the time that it was Vancouver and I'd be removing myself. And I didn't know anybody over here. So yeah, it was in February of that year, 2017, I believe, that I moved over to Vancouver.
Okay. As we continue, I want to say the importance of, if you are using drugs like heroin, to use with someone else.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because that's how your life was only saved.
Yeah.
So a safety plan is key. Thank you for bringing that up. What's the treatment center like? How are you holding up?
The treatment center was a good treatment place downtown.
Okay.
It was in Burnaby. I did quite well there. I had about 90 some odd days sober. I transferred out to Surrey to another recovery house out here.
Okay.
And I was actually doing okay, but once I got to Surrey, I went for a walk one day, and I saw the Wally Strip for the first time. And at that time, there wasn't the modules put up, so the tents were all down the street. And I was like, wow, I'd never seen anything like this in Victoria. Like, this is like an entire street community, all using and doing what they're doing there. And all of a sudden, that temptation came back to be at 90-something days. Wow. So I had $10 on me. I thought, well, I don't know what I thought. But I went to a tent, and I tapped on the tent, and somebody sold me $10 worth of what I believe to be heroin or fentanyl.
Wow, you were clean.
I was 5 something like that days clean, yeah. Even had that 3 months sober little bag on me. So I was with a friend at the time, and I didn't even tell him because he was in recovery as well. So I was being sneaky, and we went to his partner's house, and I went to the bathroom quickly, and she'd given me a rig and some other things, a needle and stuff I needed, and I did my first shot here in Surrey, and it was a very strange situation because it didn't seem to hit me. Like, I just thought, well, this is no good. I bought some cheap stuff. It's not really affecting me like I wanted to. I started walking out the door. We said goodbye there. So I would say almost 10 to 15 minutes went by. And I'm walking down the street, and all of a sudden, it hit me. And I started to just go down like I was going down an escalator. My legs were just giving out. And I overdosed. The guy I was with at the time, took off. Like a lot of times happens in addiction, I guess he was afraid of getting caught or not knowing what to do, so he took off. I woke up in Surrey Memorial Hospital, and they were telling me how fortunate I was, because what had happened was I was in a cul-de-sac in a residential area, and apparently I'd been on the ground for a while, and a nurse coming home from work right at the end of her shift had saw me, and she worked at Surrey Memorial apparently, and she had a Narcan, and she had bag valve mask and a bunch of things to assist me and get the ambulance there. So I think that was the almost closest to death that I ever had, because I wasn't around anybody to help me.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up, because we've been told a lot about carrying a naloxone kit with you, right? I just want to encourage everyone, really, if you live in a place like Surrey, BC, in the Wally area especially, do carry a Narcan, do get trained on how to use one, right? It's a huge safety plan for other people, right? So that's amazing to hear.
So lucky, you know, and I think you and I talked before off camera about my partner talking about my recovery, and from her looking in, she says, you know, you have so much strength that you were able to accomplish this, but, you know, really, it took other people. You know, that lady, that nurse that was coming home that day that pulled over to save my life, I don't even know who she is, but
to this day,
I wouldn't even be here. So I just like to think that, you know, going back to that cardboard, when I was praying to God and I wasn't really getting an answer, or I thought I wasn't getting an answer, he was doing these little things to keep me going the whole time.
What do I need to understand when you're walking down Wally? Instead of you thinking, I'm glad I'm not like these people, what are you think? What is bringing you back to using?
Yeah, you know, that's the crazy part about addiction. You know, I hadn't, with the recovery society I was in at the time, it wasn't a lot of hands-on counseling and stuff. So it was basically me just taking a time out from using, and I don't think I worked on myself enough to understand the root of why.
Wow.
In retrospect, at the time I walked down the Wally Strip, I saw fun. You know what I mean? And this was craziness, because like I work in the field today and I see the pain and the suffering, and I know it's not fun, but when I was still that close to addiction, there was a little piece of me that was drawn back. You know, and today I'm able to have that kind of that strength to see the damage that the drugs cause. But at that time I saw value, and these people had drugs of value, and I was like, well, maybe just a little bit one time.
Okay, so two things here. I want to give Amanda, I spoke to, she hasn't been interviewed on the show yet. I mean, we're planning on interviewing her. When I'm speaking off camera, she says to me, Kuda, addiction is like a vortex. It keeps pulling you back in. Just like when you're saying you're away, it keeps pulling you back in. And that's exactly what you're telling me. Again, I want to give credit to Ken, who said, remove the substance is not the goal. It's removing the substance and working on yourself. Because like you said, you just basically took time off substances. Had you worked on yourself, then I
would have some tools.
You'd have some tools, right? Were you the one who told me that going to recovery, it's like going to
like an auto body shop or
an auto body shop.
Mechanic. Yeah, I heard that from another gentleman, so I can't take credit, but it was at a meeting one time, and he said, you know, recovery is sort of like, you know, in addiction you have a broken down car, you're that broken down car. And you drive that broken down car with bald tires and sputtering, and it gets into the mechanic shop, and if you just sit there for 90 days and jump back into that broken down car, the same thing's going to happen to you when you get out into the traffic, right? So you need to get under the hood, right? You need to pull the tires up, you need to get down to what the problem is with this car, and so I always remember that shit.
Man, I really do appreciate that, because it teaches us a lot more, right? Yeah. So I do appreciate you answering the question as in what makes you use again after 90 days of being clean. So we do move forward now. So that happens. Your life is saved. Again. Do you decide as you walk out of Surrey Memorial Hospital that this was a close one? I should get clean.
You know, at this point I'd had so many overdoses, and I guess that would have been something like the 13th. I'm so used to it. It was, you know, and there was a part of me that was starting to become so depressed in thinking I'm not going to be able to do this. You see, like my whole life, like we talked about, I was able to have some drinks on the weekend, or do some cocaine with somebody one weekend, or I wasn't really a weed smoker, but even that, like, and I can always put everything down. Nothing ever. So for me to have this one thing that was stronger than me,
Wow.
This thing that I couldn't beat was just so frustrating to me. Like, so I was becoming so depressed, thinking that my life is going to end this way. It's going to end with me sitting on a toilet with a needle in my arm, and that's what my parents are going to hear about. My father's going to hear his son died in a homeless shelter with a needle in his arm and his pants around his leg, and that was the one thing that was keeping me from wanting to end it. Is just leaving a memory for people. That was that memory. I just thought I didn't want that memory to be left.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, after that overdose, the recovery house I was staying in kicked me out for using.
Okay.
So I was now homeless in Wally, and I'd only seen Wally that one day to pick up the dough, literally. So I knew nothing about it. So I was sleeping just around here in a local park for a couple of nights, and I'd walked into the shelter, and a lady working at the shelter, she started trying to show me the access and the services and the things that they had in the community.
Yes.
So what it just opened up was what they called Safe Point, which was the safe injection site right beside it. And to me, this was a brand new thing. I hadn't seen one of these things before. I was a little skeptical because I thought, oh, people know you're using here. They write down your name. They tell the police, and all those things that an addict might think about. But when I went into Safe Point to use, I was just really surprised. Like, the people were so friendly. When you're in addiction, you're not wanted in any restaurant or any business or even to use their bathroom. You know what I mean? People are like looking down on you and want you to leave. But this was a place where they were welcoming and happy and smiling. And, hey, Curtis, how's it going? Good to see you. It's been a while. And I just sort of go like, wow, this is like home almost, like in a weird way. A safe place for me to use without getting, if I was to overdose, my stuff wouldn't be stolen. I wouldn't be injured in any way, and they would look after me. So I started using Safe Point at that point, and I guess they opened it would have been in June.
People who are using, they feel judged, right? They don't feel, already some of the times they don't feel loved. That's why they started using, because they were never accepted in the community. And we always preach the idea of, guys, say hi to someone who's using drugs, look at them eye to eye, stuff like that. And then people ask, why does someone go to a place like Safe Point? It's because they get that kind of greeting.
Absolutely.
How are you? How's the day going?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for bringing that up, and I really do appreciate it. Yeah. So what happens, if you can just tell us a little bit about your experiences there, because I do know you felt welcomed, you liked the place, but it did come with its negatives because you did overdose a lot, but it also came with positives because now your life is being saved a lot.
Yeah. For the months I was using it, I was homeless here in Surrey.
Yeah.
And anytime I was able to pick up drugs or could afford drugs, that would be where I would use.
Right.
And when I went into Safe Point, like I said, everyone was always so friendly and happy to see you. And sometimes there'd be some food provided or some socks or something extra they had.
Nice.
And really, it was the only place that I felt on equal with somebody. They really treated me, and I could see the other people with respect, right? So it was nice. So I would go in there during the day, and I was starting to overdose. More and more often. It didn't seem to matter. The staff would always try to say, Curtis, you can use a couple, break it in half or use a quarter of it. And of course, I was in addiction, and it's always more is better, and so I wouldn't really listen. And I would overdose. And I say that it sounds like it's just routine, but literally 1 in every 4 times or so I would drop, and they knew it. So unfortunately for the staff, they would have to get prepared, I guess, with their Narcan and their oxygen tank and their gloves and everything ready. And they actually, it was sort of a joke in there that when Curtis came in, everybody glove up, get your mask, get ready, because he's going down. And yet they still didn't give any judgment to me on that, even though they knew, that this is a person, possibly going to lose his life. They also knew that, I guess, if they could provide me that service, that I would continue coming there. That would be the only way I would be alive, right?
Yes. Wow, that's impressive to know that they want you to come there.
Yeah.
Not for their business, but for you to make sure you're alive.
Yeah, and that's, literally those are the only people then in the world that I feel at that point that even care if I'm on the planet, right?
I love that. It gives a different perspective from at least people like me who are looking out why this place exists. But hearing it firsthand from you, it's amazing. Tell me, what happens at a specific overdose that you considered to be your very last one?
Okay. Well, the last overdose I had it was the 24th overdose at Save Point alone.
24th.
Fourth, yeah.
This is in 2 years.
No, actually, well, Save Point was only open from June to October, so that was only
10 months.
yeah, it wasn't very long. Anyway, so it was the 24th there and the 36th overall, and that morning, or at least that week leading up to that, I was so. I was suicidal. Like, I mean, I did not know how I was getting out of this mess. I did not want to live like this anymore, and I was literally hoping that the last injection I would have would be my last, right? But there was something that kept drawing me to use in the comfort of Save Point. Like, as much as I wanted to go to the forest and literally end my life because I couldn't get out of this, there was something to see the smile on their faces and just be there. So I went in that day and I just purchased some dope. And I sat down, and I remember preparing it, and I could see it looking in the mirror behind, as usual, they're getting ready for my overdose, still smiling and talking to me. And I put the needle in my arm, and immediately I felt the rush. But this was a different rush. It wasn't like the regular rush. It was a little bit different. Looking back at it, there was probably some weird combination with the fentanyl. But I started to go down.
Question, sorry, before you continue. Had you used more?
No. As a matter of fact, I didn't have that much money, so it was maybe about half of what I normally use.
But deep down, you want this to be your last one in a way.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Deep down, I'm hoping that I'm going to die, and there's nothing they can do to pull me out of this, right?
Okay.
But I felt that it would be better to do it there than somewhere in a bathroom somewhere on the floor somewhere. You know, at least I know someone would take care of my body, so to speak. So I get it into my arm, and I start to go down. It was very strange. I could see people out of the corner of my eye starting to come towards me already, some staff members. But I'm going down, and as I look into the mirror, my face changes from my face into a skull, like as if I'm dead, like a skull of my head. And I completely go out, and I feel in peace. All the other overdose I had, I don't remember really. Like it was like out you go, and you're awake, and you don't know what happened. But this one, I was experiencing it on a different level. I was literally outside my body, and for a moment I felt, this is it. I did it. I killed myself. I'm at peace, finally at peace. And as I'm laying on the ground, I guess they lowered my chair, put me on the ground. I can kind of feel all these things, even though I'm completely unresponsive, I'm not breathing. For some reason, I feel like I'm looking over myself, kind of, and watching it happen. And I'm happy it's the end. I could hear the coordinator in there saying one Narcan. I could hear the second Narcan. I could hear they get the bag valve ready, and they put for the oxygen down my throat. And the bag pumped, and I could feel the air come into my chest. And I thought, no, you guys are not bringing me back. Thanks for the help, kind of, but I want to die, and I'm going to refuse this breath. It was so strange because in no other, like I said, no other overdose could I have any kind of control like that. But this one, I'm out, and I'm like, I'm so at peace. This is the peace I've always been looking for in its death. And I can hear them saying to me, Curtis, breathe, and then get another Narcan. Curtis, breathe, and they're pinching me on my shoulder. And there's at some point in the overdose, and I'm still refusing to breathe, I think if I just give them one breath will stop bothering me. It was this weird conscious decision. So I gave them one breath. And I'm like, now I'm at peace. I can die in peace. And as they're pinching me, I start to realize that in my overdose that this might not, if this is what death looks like, this is horrible. Like, this is some sort of hell I've just put myself into. Is this my ending? It's no longer comfortable. And I start to fear this death, that not only that is it not like a peaceful afterlife, but it's some horrible place that I don't want to be. And I was like frightened. I was just frightened. And I can hear this lady in front of me. She was working there. She was holding my hand, and she said, Curtis, you're really okay, honey. You're going to be okay, honey, like that. And I took a final breath, and my eyes popped open. And she sort of had this glow around her. It was this weird haze. And it sounds so silly to say this, but she looked like an angel in a sense, because it was like, it was just sort of this love, was sort of exuding out of this. And I couldn't speak. they said something to me like, Curtis, you had an overdose. And I tried to speak and an animal noise came out of my mouth. I remember, and all of a sudden this fear came over me that I brain damaged myself. I wanted death, and what I've done is caused some brain damage because I can't even articulate words now. I'm making animal noises. And I was really frightened. I heard the coordinator call the ambulance to take me to the hospital. The ambulance drivers arrived, and they said, is he normally like this when he comes out? And they're like, no, this is different. This is something wrong. And again, that fear is just raging through me because I thought I'd literally, caused brain damage.
Oh my gosh.
I'm on my way to the hospital. I could hear the ambulance driver make some comment, and it was sarcastic, but it's memorable because he said something like, oh, you had too much up with your down, because he saw that I was reacting strangely, like, you know what I mean? Like I had mixed drugs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I look back at it now, as I totally understand him. This guy is watching overdose after overdose as he's picking them up and bringing them to the hospital in Surrey, right? And this must be getting so old and so sad to him that, he's just trying to articulate something to me in a sort of in a sarcastic way.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I also appreciated it because he's right. What the hell am I doing,
How long do you spend in the hospital?
I believe they kept me there for at least 2 days.
Okay.
And it was at that point that I was lying in my hospital bed. I was looking up at the light, and I got back to praying again because I sort of remembered that day on the cardboard. Mm-hmm. And now here I am in the hospital bed. I have another chance. For whatever reason, I have this chance. And I prayed to God again. I said, Lord, I don't know how I got here, but this is the chance. I can't do this anymore. I don't even know how to kill myself. I don't know how to do anything. I said, Lord, if you just come into my life and guide me through the rest of my journey, I'll do whatever you want. I'll live in a hospital and you can spoon feed me applesauce. Just please, I'll do what you want to do for the rest. And everything started to sort of happen right for me. I asked for a social worker at the hospital. The social worker came and I said, can I please have detox? Mm-hmm. I want to start my journey to get sober. And here's a guy that's 36 overdoses. They probably heard this a million times, like, right, your journey to get sober, sure. But, a lot of people don't get that detox on that first day. It's not always available. And it came through. She said, there's a bed for you. So that was sort of one of my first sort of signs that God was listening to me.
I guess God is answering your prayers, as you're saying, right? Yeah. Mind-blowing. Thank you so much. You go into detox. Mm-hmm. Then they lead you into a treatment center after that. Or is it a recovery house?
Recovery house. They gave me a list there. Again, they were very nice there, too, people that treated me with respect. Again.
Yeah.
And so they gave me a list, and I knew nothing about recovery houses in Surrey. I don't know if I picked a bad one or a good one, but in my mind and my heart, I was set to be sober, and I was going to do everything right. So I picked up a recovery house, and I was there for about a month, and I saw that it was a little bit of a shady one. So I was able to make a couple more phone calls from another guy that was there with me, who recommended another one, and then I went there. I guess I should say before, I ended up staying in recovery and managing recovery houses for about 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you spoke about before previously being clean and going back to substances. Mm-hmm. What keeps you sober when you went through this journey?
Yeah, we had counseling groups at the recovery house I was at where we had groups every day.
Oh, so you did have groups every day?
5 hours a day. They had licensed counselors and stuff too, and I could even call them on times when I just wanted to talk, so they were very helpful.
So this was the biggest difference now?
Yeah.
Wow. So that does make a difference when you put a substance down, when you go to the body shop.
Yeah,
get the work
go to the mechanic because I needed to do work, and I didn't know what that work was, but I knew also I needed to humble myself, and I was humbled.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't a decision I made to humble myself. I mean, literally, here's a man in his early 50s overdosing this many times and being taken to the hospital.
Yes.
I knew I couldn't do this myself, so I just relied on God, on praying, and I relied on the people around me. I tried to surround myself with people that looked like they were doing well.
It's eye-opening. It's a good perspective to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at least from our side, anyone who's willing to help a loved one in that situation, understanding how ready they are is key as well, right?
And that's so rare too, right? It's hard to catch people when they're ready. It's one thing I've learned, like working on the other side, is that, you know, you have to just always be available to provide that service.
Yes, yes,
Because
yes, yes,
people,
yes,
you know,
yes.
when they're ready, they're ready.
I do want to, as we kind of like wrap up a little bit, you decide to go to Safe Point one day.
Yeah, I was about 3.5 months, 4 months clean.
Okay.
And I just started managing a second stage recovery house. They saw potential in me. Normally they don't give people that position right away, but they did. I guess my maturity and the fact that I was really dedicated to this.
Yeah.
So I felt so good about what I was doing. I wanted to go back to Safe Point and thank the people that kept me alive all those times, right? Because really somebody put them there for me. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I simply wouldn't be here. And I just wanted to go there and let them know. Because I also felt that when people leave Safe Point, or if you don't see them again, you think the worst. They could die.
Correct.
They're in jail. And I just want them to know that they did something good here and keep doing this for people, right? So I went down, and of course they were happy to see me, the people that were working there. Oh my God, hugs, everything, man, Curtis, you're doing so good. And it just so happened that they just started a new program there for a peer support worker.
Yeah.
And they hadn't hired anybody yet. And they said, Chris, if you're interested, you would be the perfect person if you're okay, because we don't want to put you in that situation.
Right. Yeah.
So, so I took the peer support job, and I worked there for about, I believe it was about 6 months as a peer.
Yeah.
And then eventually I had to get my criminal record check sorted out. I was able to apply as a harm reduction worker, and actually work as one of the employees that saved my life, so I can do it for others.
I want people to understand Safe Point is right by Tent City, the place that he had walked into darkness and got caught up. You are walking there with a clear mind.
Different mind, yeah.
Different mind, right? As you walk there, you told me you kind of like stopped back a little bit.
I did, yeah. So I remember that mistake I made at 90 Days Clean before.
Yes.
And as much as I wanted to go back, I also knew that people that were successful in recovery, and I think a lot of the guests that you've had, you see have been working in that field.
Yes.
I guess I humbled myself to realize I can't do things my way. I'm going to watch what successful people do, and I'm going to do it their way. So I see that a lot of people with long-term recovery go back and work in that field. And so I wanted to go back to State Point for that reason as well. So I'm walking down the street. As I'm approaching those tents, I stop for a second. And I've been relying on God for everything else I've done so far. So I prayed to him. I said, God, and it was strange. When I prayed for, I just prayed for, don't let me see this particular person, because he would probably have drugs to give them to me. Don't let me see this one. And if I do, help me keep my head down and go straight, you know?
Wow.
So for months, even probably for my first 3 or 4 months working there, I said a little prayer at the end of the street so that I knew I'd have strength to get to the door.
What happens one day when you were helping
That's
someone?
very strange. So I'm about 6-7 months sober now, and I'm considering myself very strong. I'm seeing dope on the table all the time. I don't have any interest. I'm helping people. So one young girl came in, and I say young, she's maybe 18, 19, and she had this, never seen her before, and she had this story that her boyfriend and her started injecting a couple years past, and the boyfriend would always inject her, and she didn't know how. And just earlier that day, apparently he pushed her out of a moving car. She was in Surrey alone. She was dope sick, injured, and she needed help, and she wanted help to cook her dope and put it in her arm. Well, at Safe Point, we're not allowed to actually put the needle in the person's arm, but we can help them prepare their dope, or we can stabilize the needle as they're using it, things like that. So what I didn't know about her, she literally knew nothing. So I had to pour the dope into the cooker. I showed her how much water. I cooked it. I showed her how to get injected, put the filter in, pull it into the thing. I tied off her arm with the blue band, and I handed her the needle. The second I handed her the needle, I rolled up my sleeve. I looked at myself in the mirror like, what the hell was that? What the hell? Here I am, strong in my recovery, and I had this knee-jerk reaction that I did all this stuff, and what comes next is me doing this.
Right.
It was literally at that time that I was just like, wow, I remember this story of Pavlov's dog.
It tells me, I guess, the power for the subconscious mind.
It was funny. I looked around to see if any staff saw that that I worked with. I looked around the other people, and I'm like, oh my God, put my sleep back down. Yeah, it was so routine.
Tell me about your girlfriend and daughter.
Okay, so I knew I had to separate myself to get clean, and I knew that they were still in addiction. So And I waited till about a year sober when I knew I was strong enough, and I started making some calls to see if they were okay, texting, mostly after my daughter because she's the one that I'm really trying to help the most. Of course, I would help them both if they wanted it, but I found out that they were both still in addiction.
Yeah.
So all I did was I said, you know what, I can't come there, guys. I can't come there for me.
Yeah.
But I'm here, and if anybody needs help, I work in that industry today,
Yes.
where I can provide services, and if anybody wants it, they can come. And so, as much as I don't know what's going, I have people or friends that work in the
Industry.
in the industry, but we're in Victoria, and they keep an eye on them for me.
Yes.
And
yes,
I
yes.
always let them know that if they ever need help, they can call me. So whenever their day comes and they're ready.
And that's all we need to know, because most importantly, like we said, recovery is about you.
And one more thing with that, and I think we talked about this, is that I may not be able to help them directly,
Yes.
but I feel today that by helping others there, I'm
Yes.
indirectly helping them, because I know there's people on that end
Exactly.
that are doing that for them too, and that's all we can all do, right?
Ah, that's great insight, man. Great insight. So it's beyond just them now.
Yeah.
Right. So someone else, a version of you who's over there, can do their best to help them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do want to quickly, before we do end this, because we do ask ourselves, why does someone go into addiction, A, B, C, D, and here you are, you don't have history of addiction, really, right? But what's really fascinating is I'm always asking myself, what are the key factors that we are missing so that I may understand myself? Am I at risk of addiction, right? But you yourself, you were actually trying to cure some anxiety
Yeah.
all your life. And in a way, opiates became the cure to this.
That's right.
Even more to understand was your family, you have a history of anxiety in your family.
Yeah, it was, according to the psychiatrist, it was genetic. My brother has it, my mother, my grandfather drank himself to death because of it. So it's genetically in my family.
It's genetically in your family. Your grandfather, without knowing, not having all the tools, ended up leaning only on alcohol,
yeah.
right? Your mom, how did she cope?
She drank every day. She was a little woman, but she only had 3 or 4 beers, but that was enough to calm her. But she did consistently have those every day.
Self-medication. Your brother?
Same thing, alcohol. Yeah.
Something. So why I ask that, it's important to know, this individual was doing great in life, did not have the tendencies of an addict, right? However, there were some risk factors that are lingering in the background.
I think this is awesome what you're doing. I think that the more and more people I've been watching on your videos, I think it's getting the message out to others.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Your story will help someone to not overdose. If I use, it's important to use with someone else. There's so many learning things that we can use in this discussion. So, again, thank you everyone for tuning in. Chris, it's good to see you again.
Yeah.
You take it easy, my friend.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey everyone, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I do really appreciate it. If you can, please subscribe to our channel for more content. If you can, please join our Patreon team. The link is down below. And also you can join our GoFundMe. The link is also involved below. This will help us to bring awareness of addiction as well as destigmatize this illness. Your support is greatly appreciated and we'll create more content for you. Thank you so much.